Hey everybody, Bandicoot Commando here, and welcome back to Rayman HD. Last time, we beat the GBA version of Rayman, and we more or less finished the collection here, because there's really nothing left to really play around with, like, in terms of going through a story, a game story and such, because Rayman Designer and its stuff here, it's just levels for fun and challenges. No real story to it. So, with any other finale, we're going to end things with showing off some bonus content and such. So for starters, I'm going to show off the Super Nintendo prototype of what was meant to be Rayman. In this single level, unfinished prototype, you can experience for yourself the very first playable demo of Rayman. Here we are. So don't be expecting too much. It's fight. Fight the virus. Oh, I forgot how high he can jump. Yeah, this is basically what the idea of what Rayman on the Super Nintendo would have been like. But this is what he looked like. He was pretty bulky looking. Hold the square button and you can charge up a fist, but you can't actually fire or shoot your shot with the fist. I mean, this is a partially unfinished demo, so they didn't have time to do everything. If you hold down square, you do move faster, so it is like a run feature. X is your jump, and yeah, there are certain things that can happen. Like, there's clearly some kind of invisible barrier here. That's why Rayman's head he kind of gets his body squished like that. Anytime you hit something above you, yeah. Oh, so I have a feeling that, yeah, there's meant to be objects here, but it's just invisible barriers because they didn't have time to properly implement whatever the objects were supposed to be. We got this. I'm going to assume this was either meant to be some kind of teleporter or some other feature because why else would it be here? It clearly was going to shoot stuff up too. Come on. Oop. And now we're up here. Don't worry. This may look hazardous, and it probably most likely is supposed to be, but again, since this is an unfinished demo, they didn't get a chance to implement everything the way that they wanted. Overall, it's still very interesting to see how these things are functioning and such. And then we get to here, and this was either meant to be the end of a level, or you walk in here and it would be like an elevator, and either you go up or down. But again, I only know roughly based on what I can figure out and come to my own conclusions, or what the Ray Wiki says about it. So it is pretty interesting to see like how this would have been. If you do like hack at the game, you can find a few other little things in there, but you're not gonna find much really because again, it's an unfinished prototype that didn't have a lot in it in the first place because they it was just meant to be a demo that for all I know, it was just meant to showcase and act as a pitch, but yeah, it would have been interesting to see how this would have turned out in the end. It does nothing. Pressing some other buttons to see if it does something, but yeah, nothing's really happening. No need to save. Why does it keep... Why does my... One of these days, I will get me a new headset. On to the history. No arms, no legs? No problem. From the mind of a young, inspiring animator came one of the most impactful new game characters of the CD-ROM era. This is the story of how Rayman came to be. Michel Ancel, born in Monaco in 1972, the young Michel moved around the world with his family as his father's military post changed. He didn't play a video game console until an encounter with an Atari 2600 at a friend's house in Tunisia on the North African coast in 1983. You can press these to, yeah, it acts as videos, so...
développeur de jeux vidéo, j'ai
Oh, I can't rewind?
travaillé sur des jeux perso.
Oh, I'm using the wrong buttons, so yeah. And I can make Rayman look back and forth. So yeah, you can watch these videos and learn more insight from the various people connected to Rayman. But everyone is speaking French though, so unless you don't know
Alors, je
French,
m'appelle Michel
make
Ancel,
sure
je
you
suis
have the
développeur de jeux
subtitles
vidéo.
on.
J'ai travaillé.
Moving across the Mediterranean Sea to Montpellier, France, with his family. At 13, Michel was suddenly exposed to a thriving game culture of arcades, consoles, and computers. At school, he began learning to program 8-bit computers, like the Atari 800. Eventually, Michel's parents bought him a state-of-the-art Atari ST computer, a 16-bit machine that could produce arcade-quality graphics. For Michel, who loved drawing, this was the perfect opportunity to bring his creations to life on the screen. Yep, this is what it is. Boy, it is so old looking. 1985, but yeah, this is what some computers were like back then. At 16 years old, Michel teamed up with programmer Nicolas Chakroun, who had recently released his debut game Killdozers through a French software house called Lancor. The two began on an action strategy game called Mechanic Warriors. And yeah, here it is. (1888). Notable and quotable. It was a very ambitious project. A very technical kind of RTS game where you had to battle between different groups of robots, Ancel said in 2011. It was cool because when you won battles, you could take a piece from a defeated enemy and use this to build yourself new robots to fight with. Ubisoft in 1989. At this time, Michel submitted a demonstration of his work to the French publisher Ubisoft, which was looking for game submissions. What's in a name? Founded by the five Guillemot brothers in Paris, France, in 1986, after they had been running a mail-order computer sales business for 2 years. The name Ubisoft comes from the word ubiquitous, meaning something found everywhere. Yeah, this is Ubisoft's old logo. Like, there were very few games that you could play that had this logo. Never did I ever get to play any of those games. While Mechanic Warriors was never completed, Michel and Nicholas were able to release The Intruder, a less technically ambitious scrolling shooter game with a similar futuristic mechanical aesthetic. Wait a minute. Oh yeah, this shows you gameplay of it. Kill the machine. Hey, you. Wreck and pile. Michelle and Nicholas continued their artist programming partnership with Pick and Pile, a puzzle game in which players match symbols to clear the board. It's kind of like Puyo Puyo, I guess. Yeah, it's basically Puyo Puyo. Pick and Pile 2600. Michelle's work even made it to the console that started his love of video games. Although the graphics were extremely scaled down, this version of Pick and Pile was ported to the Atari 2600 by Dennis M. Kiss and was Ubisoft's only game on the 2600. Never did they try doing another one. The Teller. The same year, Ubisoft released The Teller, also known as Brain Blasters, a puzzle game in which the player has to memorize and recreate a pattern of blocks. This was the first published game created entirely by Michel Ancel. It's interesting to see how the way that the words for their games are spelled have a similar aesthetic to it. With the intruder and the teller here, it's almost like, it's like a trademark, I guess. Do you remember? Because I don't. While living with his wife and children in Montpellier, Michel accepted a job as a graphic artist for Ubisoft, but he was dissatisfied with the work since the Paris office was so far from his home, and he wanted to go back to making his own games. Around this time, Michel reconnected with a friend from his high school days, Frederick Hode. The two had bonded over their mutual love of computer programming in Montpellier, and now met again in Paris. Frederick had also grown up learning to create games with computers, although he was more of a fan of the Amiga. He had landed a job with Ubisoft where he was creating a shooter for the Mega Drive or Sega Genesis called Zodiac. And yes, this is Frederick. I'm not entirely sure what he's holding, but I'm going to assume it's an Amiga, but that's my guess. Oh, there's more. Yep, Zodiac. Game over. A little character. Michel showed Frederick something he had been working on in his spare time. He had been using 3D modeling software on his Atari ST to create an original character he called Rayman. The name Rayman was derived from ray tracing, a computer graphics technique used to stimulate the reflections of light in a 3D image. Rayman's lack of arms and legs came from the difficulty of early 3D animation. By simply having his hands and feet float near his body, he could come to life more easily. With Zodiac finish, though was never released, Frederick decided to team up with Michel, who left his job at Ubisoft. The two went back to Montpellier to begin work on Rayman as a freelance project. While personal computers had dominated the European gaming scene in the 80s, 16-bit game consoles like the Mega Drive and the Super Nintendo, which had just been officially released in Europe, were rapidly gaining in popularity at the dawn of the 90s. Yep, that's indeed a Super Nintendo. Well, this is a Japanese cop version, though. American copies are more gray and their buttons are purple and such. The Super Nintendo CD-ROM. Before it launched the Super Nintendo, Nintendo said that it would soon add CD-ROM capability to the system, with an optional accessory to be released in January of '93. And guess what happened there? With an eye towards releasing the game on the upcoming Super Nintendo CD, Michel and Frederick put together a simple demo version of Rayman to show to Ubisoft. Back in 2017, Frederick found the demo again and dumped it for others to work on and made playable. And you can play it, which I just did. To pitch their full game concept to Ubisoft, Michel and Frederick put together a paper game design Bible with sketches and texts that gave them a full overview of the proposed characters, gameplay, and levels. The final game would be changed drastically from this proposal. You can read the whole thing. It's a lot of pages, though, so I'm not really going to read it. Jim and Hendrix. The original plot of the game featured a boy named Jim, or Jimmy, whose eccentric uncle, Hendrix, gets absorbed into a computer and asks his nephew to enter the computer to help him, becoming the computer character Rayman as he does so. No pages. The Rayman team was still a team of two when Ubisoft opened up a new studio called UB Pictures, now called Ubisoft Montpellier, with Michel and Frederick at the helm. This allowed the duo to start hiring more key team members, like Alexandra Stibel here. Responding to a newspaper ad looking for animators for video games, Alexandra Stibel, now Alexandra Ansel, left the world of television animation for a new frontier. Yes, this is Michel's wife. Jacques Exterior. Alexandra's co-worker Jacques, who had worked on television animation series such as The Smoggies and The Animals of Farthing Wood, went with her to UB Pictures to work on Rayman. Out of those two, I have heard of The Animals of Farthing Wood. It's more well known in Europe than it is here in America, but excuse me there. But it was originally a series of books that then got adapted into a cartoon show of sorts. But that cartoon was never exactly released in America. Except it kinda was. It was released on tape as one big OVA, like well not OVA, but just basically an abridged version of various episodes strung together to create a movie. Oliver Soeli. While other key Rayman artists had come from the world of traditional animation, Oliver had cut his teeth on computer animations and technical demos, contributing pixel art to the first Rayman game. Ugh. Oh, excuse me. Moving to the Jaguar. When it became apparent that the Super Nintendo CD system was not going to ship at time or at all, and Cell and team moved the game's development to the upcoming Atari Jaguar platform, where they felt they can handle the ambitious 2D animations they were creating. Oh, it's a video. I thought it was going to be an image. Creating a character. Alexandra brought her knowledge of the world of traditional cartoon animation to Rayman, working closely with Michel to further develop the characters. Note that this is now in 1994. Animation frames. Rayman's moves were sketched on paper, then digitized to create his on-screen animations. This is something that a lot of games did back then. A lot of games tend to do this where basically, yeah, you create the sketches like with traditional animation, you create your cells and sketches, but then you scan those sketches onto the computer and then you can then piece them all together to create the animations. Various sketches of Rayman here. Hmm. There's this one character here, seemingly wearing a dress. Presumably, this was either an very early design for Batilla, or for a completely different character that didn't make it into the game. That's a bird of some kind that also didn't make it in the game. Thanks, Rayman. This super helicopter potion's all yours, baby. Silly face. Oh, that's it. The advanced nature of the 2D animation made possible for Rayman meant that more experts from the world of animation could now directly apply their skills to video games. While as the world of Rayman shifted from the original concept of inside a computer, the animation team conceptualized a wide variety of imaginative cartoon settings for the game's levels. Various sketches and concept art created during the production of Rayman. This is a video, so this is. Oh boy. That's it. That's all the art there. Ah, okay. Rayman made his public debut at the Summer International Consumer Electronics Show in Chicago, Illinois, with a game demo that was playable in Atari's booth at the Business Only Expo. Critics loved the expressive 2D animation. This early in development version of Rayman for the Jaguar is likely close to what the Consumer Electronics Show attendees played that summer. It features one unfinished level with very different on screen displays for health, lives, and power. Yep. Drop me a note. This set of 4 postcards featured art of Rayman, Mama, the clowns, and Mr. Sax are dated 1994, meaning they were likely distributed long before the release of Rayman. The world's newest superhero. Yeah, these are. I think these postcards were strictly for the people at the Ubisoft offices. Oh, there goes my water. Whoops. Viking Mama. She's big, bad, and beautiful? Clown enemies. Beware if they're gifts. And Mr. Sax. He plays a mean tune. Team expands. Ubisoft decided that Michel and the core Montpellier team would continue to develop the Jaguar version, while it began to staff a studio in Paris to port the game to other platforms. Eventually, well over 100 people were working on Rayman. At the Winter CES in January of '95, Ubisoft said that it would release Rayman not only for the Jaguar, but for a variety of new upcoming consoles: Sega's 32X, the Saturn, the 3DO, and the PlayStation. The promotional flyer distributed in January of '95 shows that at this stage, the plot was still the original concept of a boy named Jimmy who becomes Rayman, where he enters a fictional computer realm called Here It's Cool. Join Jimmy, a 10-year-old who escapes reality by entering Here It's Cool, a fantasy kingdom he has created within the realms of his computer. When an evil power takes over his world, Jimmy becomes Rayman, a superhero who must save his friends before it's too late. The June '95 advertisement for Rayman touted the game's 60 FPS animations and large color palette, but still only listed the game as coming for the Jaguar. 60 frames of per animation, 50 different characters, friends and foes. A little something that didn't make it into the game of Rayman, though, right there. 65,000 colors, 60 levels, and 6 unique worlds. I've got an attitude. Another early advertisement for the Jaguar version of Rayman noted that what the characters lacked in terms of limbs, they made up for in that essential quality of '90s mascots: attitude. So I've got no arms and legs, but I've got attitude in your face this fall. There's nothing ugly at all about this game. It totally rules. A quote from the magazine Electronic Gaming Monthly on the sales flyer for the Jaguar version. The first edition of Rayman to be released was the PlayStation version, which became available in early September of '95, alongside the US and European releases of the console itself. Yep. This is the cover of the game that I had. Later magazine ads for Rayman emphasized that the game was one of the first titles available for the next generation of gaming consoles. What do you get when you mix a mad woman with a rolling pin, a Stone Age maniac, a deranged saxophone blowing killer notes, a pirate with a flying saucepan? You get more than you can handle. Welcome to the next generation. A 1996 ad shared some accolades from the popular gaming magazine of the time, noting that this level of support meant that Rayman might consider a run for public office. With supporters like these, you'd think he was running for office. If only. In Europe, the PlayStation games included Rayman
I'm
were released in
waiting.
smaller cases, but thicker than a standard CD jewel case to accommodate the usually large
I'm
multilingual
waiting.
game manuals. Yeah, that's because lots of different people in Europe, different languages. Rayman got a more colorful, cartoonish box art for his debut in Japan. The large
Go,
text on the
go.
front and back would read and translate Rayman, save the Electoons. Yep, got more here. I can't read no Japanese text either. In Japan, Rayman was prominently advertised as being born in the capital city of art, and Ubisoft offered a trip to France as a promotional prize. While full scale development of Rayman had originally started on the Jaguar, this version was not released until after the PS1. It lacked the animated video sequences that had been added to the CD-ROM versions of the game, and other features and levels worked differently. But it's still fun all the same. While the Jaguar version of Rayman did make it to retail stores, the special 32X version mentioned in the sales flyer was never released for the Genesis add on. It's pretty sad and unfortunate. A version of Rayman for personal computers launched in Europe in late 1995 and came to the US and Japan the next year. This version would be later notable due to all the additional content that was later released. Yep, captivating, mind bending, and addictive. One trip and you're hooked. As seen on MVT, MVH1, and Nickelodeon. Promote the DOS release of Rayman, Ubisoft launched a contest. Play the demo of Rayman and answer some questions, and you'd be entered in a drawing for a trip to Hawaii and Maui. Sounded pretty fun and promising. Ooh, let's see if we can answer the questions. All this outrageous action takes place in this setting. You do this to make the valuable purple fruit ball. You punch it, so Punch. There's an extra one of these hidden on the platform above the wooden hand. Power. piece of gold do you get if you float on the purple fruit? Fist. How many hidden cages are in this demo? 6. Of course, 5, yeah. 6. Oh, not even 6. Hidden cages, huh? 1, 2, 3, 4, 8. Rayman will scream if you too far over the side of the demo. Falling? F-A-L-L-I. No? F-A-L-L. Has to be falling. Oh, that's down. F-A-L-L. Yes. If you're going across, when you press the X button on your keyboard, what is that Rayman sticks out to scare the taller guards? Tongue. Go to the Ubisoft website to learn the game's cheat code. C-H-E-8 cheat codes. In '97, Ubisoft released Rayman Designer, a PC program that let players create their own levels and share them online. This included Rayman's new levels, a set of 24 challenging new stages. These were also included in a compilation called Rayman Gold. It's in French, that's in Spanish, that's in. Huh. Once, once Rayman's fans had the opportunity to create their own levels, Ubisoft compiled the best 40 levels into a new game release. This was also included in the compilation package Rayman Forever. Final level pack for the original Rayman. This consisted of 60 new levels created by Ubisoft and was distributed in various compilation packs such as Rayman Collector, DOS Flyer, the undisputable video game hit that has swept the nation, comes to PC. In an April '96 press conference, Ubisoft announced that the blockbuster success of Rayman had led the company to a flourishing US business. Thanks to Rayman, Ubisoft had truly entered the global gaming world. Early version of Rayman 2. After the release of Rayman, the team began to work on a 2D sequel titled Rayman 2. This version ultimately gave way to a fully 3D sequel called Rayman 2 The Great Escape. As a bonus, one level of the 2D prototype was hidden deep inside that game, but only in the PlayStation version, though. It was not in the other versions. Promotional images that were distributed to the press as early as '96 to promote Rayman 2. The original villain of the game, the General, or the Commander, and he kind of resembles the General from Tonic Trouble. Oh, there is English versions. Yep, this is what Batilla looked like in a more 3D look, but still retaining the 2D dimensions. Yep, I remember when I did the demo back when we did Rayman 2 on the channel long ago. Good times. Ride 'em! That was the best thing that that demo had, was that you'd be able to switch back and forth between being in the foreground or the background. I loved it when 2D games could do that. Rayman returns. The original Rayman 2 was announced at the '96 E3 Expo in Los Angeles. This press release gives us a look at what this game might have included, from new powers to a more gradual difficulty curve. Ubisoft was going to release it in late of '96.
Hey, you!
The original 2D concept of Rayman 2 was even advertised in Ubisoft's games catalog that was distributed with the DOS version of Rayman back in '96. Rayman's Numbers and Letters. That was Rayman Brain Games. Although it's simply titled Rayman, this Game Boy Color title is actually a unique game with totally different levels and gameplay. One of its main designers was David Solani, who would go on to be the creative director of the Mario Rabbids series. So he would go on to help with Battle Kingdom and Sparks of Hope, and potentially a third title, if there will be a third title. Ooh, messages on Discord. Ooh. Okay, yep. All right. This magazine ad lets you know that Rayman, like Chinese food, can be now carried with you anywhere. It's why it's called takeout. I would love to have this Chinese box of Rayman. I don't eat Chinese takeout food myself, but I would love to have that box for collection reasons. The European box art for the Game Boy Color version was similar to the US, but with a red color scheme instead of green. Don't know why they did that. The Game Boy Color version was titled Rayman, Mr. Dark's Trap in Japan. Mr. Dark's Trap. This Game Boy Advance version of Rayman is based on the original game, although many changes were made to the gameplay to decrease the difficulty, such as giving Rayman more health and making boss characters easier to defeat. Oh, whoa. Unleash the 32-bit universe. A magazine advertisement for Rayman Advance emphasizes that the full Rayman experience was now available on a handheld platform. Available June 2001. Images of Rayman in the Electoons distributed to gaming media to promote Rayman Advance. I do kind of remember seeing these back in the day. Press release announcing that Rayman Universe would be available at the same day as the US launch of Game Boy Advance on June 11th. Ubisoft describes the painstaking recreation of the original game by Digital Eclipse. In September of 2001, the unique Game Boy Color game was also released for personal digit assistants, PDAs, platforms like the Palm and the Pocket PC, which were popular in the years before smartphones. I once used a Palm Pilot long ago in third grade. It's part of what our school was doing. Very interesting to use. I actually enjoyed using it. A sales flyer for the PDA versions of Rayman promised a real console game now on PDA and noted that by this point, 9 million copies of Rayman games have been sold worldwide. Since many Palm devices had monochromatic screens, there needed to be a black and white version of Rayman. I mean, technically, the Game Boy Color would also have that limited palette color as well. Fortunately for Palm devices with color screens, there was a full color version available. It actually matches the first game's art style very closely. A higher resolution Pocket PC had its own version of Rayman, still based on the Game Boy Color game though. Later, as handheld computing devices became more powerful, a version of the original Rayman was released for the Pocket PC platform, Rayman Ultimate. Another version of the original Rayman game was released for iOS and Android in 2016. In addition to an easy mode, Rayman Classic also offered a hard mode with 1 life and 0 continues. It has since been delisted though, so don't go looking for it. Rayman Origins and Legends composer Christophe Herrel discusses creating the new music for this 30th anniversary release of Rayman, paying homage to the original composer Remy Gazelle. Yeah, Remy is no longer with us. It's sad too, because when Remy then got on social media and shared a few Rayman things,
I'm
he
waiting.
was interacting with the fans. He was willing to like share more. He really was enjoying it. I think he had something big planned that he wanted to share and go over, but then he passed away back in 2019, and yeah, it was sad when it happened. Rayman Redemption does have a dedication to his memory, so great man
I'm
he was for
waiting.
the music. Character created by Michel and his team single-handedly launched Ubisoft into the
Hey,
global
you.
game industry and has left a lasting legacy of creativity and childlike wonder. Little computer animated character created by a teenage Michel Ancel celebrated his 30th anniversary in 2025. Here's to many more years of
I'm
Rayman.
waiting.
And that's it. Even if Ancel no longer works for Ubisoft, he knows Rayman's in good hands, or so we hope.
Hey, you.
Overall, a wonderful character, wonderful series. And if things go well, we're going to get more of him in these next few years. But for now, that will do for this episode of Rayman HD. And that is it. Uh, as for what the next game will be, I will give some hints. It'll be on my PS2, and it's gonna be another one of those weird games where it's like it's nothing too special in particular, but for me it's special. But I will warn you, it is rated M, and it's gonna be, well, I say it's gonna be bloody and violent, but it's not gonna be as bloody and violent as you think it is. But we're gonna be in for a flying time. So that is it. I will see you guys in the next one. Like,